Birdemic, Shock and Terror. If there is a film that is a combination of so bad it's kind of hilarious, so bad it's boring, and so bad it is below amateur, then you have a film like this. Critics really hammer this film for being below amateur in terms of its technicalities and acting, and some people have very much put this film as a cult film in terms of just how legendarily bad and crummy it can be, but still manages to have a few shucks here and there. But I'm getting way too ahead of myself. This is my review of Birdemic Shock and Terror, which was released on February 27, 2010. It was written, directed, and produced by James Nguyen. The co-producer was Tim Ubles. The cinematographer was Daniel Mai. The editor was Kim Chow. The music was done by Andrew Sager. And it stars the talents of Alan Baugh, Whitney Moore, Adam Sessa, Catherine Botcha, Janae Castor, Carlton Osborne, Rick Camp, Stephen Gustafson, Patsy Van Ettinger, Mona Lisa Moon, Danny Weber, Laura Cassidy, Damian Carter, Jake Pennington, and of course, James Nguyen. There has been no shortage of reviewers who have also called this film out in terms of its overall badness, John Tram being the one that comes to mind. And this film is quite legendary for just how awkward everything is in terms of its writing, its acting, and its subpar film production. Heck, this film was made below $10,000. You could really tell just by how cheap everything is, from the way it's shot to all the obvious and really super obvious CGI of all of these bird creatures and everything else in between. Now, starting off with the story, if I were to rename this film, I would call it this: Birdemic, padding and time wasting, because everything about the story's pacing is just so freaking slow. I mean, I can't even get invested into this. Any good horror title would make sure that there is a great amount of atmosphere, thrills, chills, and just a lot of tension being built up. I did not feel any tension right here. I just felt like my time was being wasted. I felt like I was being bored out of my mind, and these bird creatures don't appear until 40 to 50 minutes later on in the film. I felt like I was just wasting my time watching this quote-unquote film and really not getting any thrills whatsoever until the last few moments. I felt like this is really something that is so unrecommendable for any aspiring horror writer. If they want to have a lesson of how not to write horror films or how not to write thriller films, then this is definitely the film for them. The film just drags and drags until the last few moments. And on top of that, the writing is absolutely garbage. Every line that the characters say just seems to be awkwardly spewed out of their mouths, and at times it just feels like trash-talking exposition. I don't even feel invested in anything. I felt like I wanted to skip to some of the good parts, which I highly doubted that there were any good parts, and just call it a day. And the overall cinematography is very shoddy. What with unmixed sounds being used, and just not a great amount of attention being paid into the whole process of filmmaking. This is definitely filmmaking 101 fail big time. And nowhere does this demonstrate this any worse than Birdemic, Shock and Terror. And the music, well, I just didn't really care about any of the music here, since it's kind of obvious that I don't even hear anything original in the soundtrack. I think the people behind the music just compilated a lot of stuff they think is really good for the film and just threw it all in there. And the characters? What characters? I can't even get invested into these people. Let's see, what do we have here? Oh, yeah, we have Rod, who is really bland as a character, and he just seems to be this type of businessman who really wants to make sure that he wants the best for his company, but I just didn't really get into him. Natalie, who is a model who somehow ended up being promoted to Victoria's Secret, and a lot of other characters who I don't really freaking care for, nor have the time to get myself invested in. They're not really characters in the slightest. They basically just feel like a bunch of schnooks who just really threw themselves in this film and just managed just to really move on awkwardly throughout the entire motion of this thing. And do not get me started on the acting. It's atrocious. It's wooden. And none of these actors really seem to know what they're doing. I mean, with the exception of Patsy Van Ettinger. I mean, she managed to kind of make the best out of this really thankless mother role that she portrayed in. But hey, this woman has appeared in a lot of James Nguyen's films. So I'm not really impressed by the acting. It's wooden, it's cheesy, it's so freaking lifeless. There's no pizzazz, no passion, and every time they spew out their lines, it just feels so stupid and it's so awkward in its execution that I kind of felt like I was just feeling like they're just wasting their time in this film all because of some paycheck, which I highly doubt that they ever got paid for this thing. So overall, well, there were some things that were kind of entertaining in terms of the awkward hilariousness, but it wasn't really enough to salvage the overall package that Birdemic had to offer. It was a very disappointing mess. It's slow, it's so filled to the brim with padding, and it just felt like a complete waste of my time. So it's really obvious that I'm just going to give it a 0 out of 5 and just be done with it. Yes, there were some parts that were kind of entertaining in a very awkward way, but I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone who prefers having better storylines and better everything in their films. It just feels like that. A dumb waste of one's time. And if you want to watch this film just to have a few moments of your time being wasted, then this might be for you. Well, that's all for now. Will I review the sequel? I see why the hell not. I have no idea why this thing ended up having a sequel. Maybe the director himself was so desperate to make a cash cow out of this thing, which I highly doubt. So I might as well just review the sequel as well. God help me. I can be such a glutton for punishment. So until then, good night, everybody.